innovating and reinventing internet business models to build products and services that have and will redefine customer experience and behavior shift. How interesting can things be if the topic is such enticing? So we have a great panel waiting us. We have in the panel Arun Jairaman, Marketing Head, Big Basket; Shudeep Nayak, VP and Head of Engineering, PayU. We have Soumya Kant, founding member, Tovia.com. We have Ramnik Khurana, co-founder, Product Lenskart. And the session will be moderated by Rohit Paranjape, co-founder and CEO, Sugarbox. Over to you, Rohit.
Hello, everyone. Over 6 months after we went into lockdown, we continue to live in an uncertain time, which needs us to reinvent and innovate to keep functioning, stay efficient, and make the most of the opportunities in hand. Case in point is this virtual summit in the absence of a real one, instead of not having one. Uh, I think by now all of us have gotten used to every conversation starting with COVID. I believe, with such a significant and long-standing impact that it has had, it must feature into every relevant industry conversation. Uh, but maybe for the central theme of today's conversation, we'll also try to jog our memory a little bit and go back to early 2016 first. 2016 in itself was a landmark year for India. Today, we all are familiar with the terminologies like pre-COVID, but this was actually also a very important era. We were still in the pre-UPI and pre-Geo days. Uh, at this time, there were only about 340 million of us that were connected. Internet was expensive. Digital and the entire conversation around digital was still largely limited to India one. Payments were largely limited to credit cards, refilling money into mobile wallets, and auto debit mandates. And we still weren't quite hooked on to a variety of screens all day long the way we are today. April 2016 saw the launch of UPI, and the entire ecosystem that followed completely transformed the way we perceive and carry out digital payments and the multiple use cases that we use using digital payments today. The real jolt, however, came in September 2016. Nobody can forget the launch of Geo, and then the predatory data pricing that followed laid the foundation for the Digital India story that completely transformed the ecosystem in India. Even prior to the nation going into lockdown, India had nearly doubled its internet user base. And a large chunk of the 300 million users that were added between 2017 and 2019 actually came from India 2 and even India 3. The idea of the internet, however, was very different for these cohorts. Where we in India 1 use the internet for a wide variety of use cases, the internet for these 300 million users was actually synonymous with social media, OTT, and gaming. I've actually tried to do this myself. I've gone to villages and asked people what is the internet. And the typical answers that you end up getting are WhatsApp, Facebook, TikTok, or some OTT platform that they're actually using. Uh, then COVID hit. The purely digital businesses, all of these social OTT, gaming, and tech, had a field day. And I think all of them have posted more than 100%, 200%, or even 300% growth during the last 2 to 3 quarters. For the larger digital economy, however, it was a mixed bag. Although digital adoption and consumer need for digital was at its peak, the supply chain constraints made things extremely challenging. And then finally, for industries like hospitality, travel, and mobility, it was like a nightmare we have after a horror movie. But I'm not going to spend time on things that already have been discussed abundantly over the last 2 quarters. Let me highlight two or three macro trends that are relevant to the conversation and the topic today. The first one is that even in India 1, people were forced to do everything digitally. Uh, my mom finally and reluctantly placed her first order on Big Basket. The second trend was merchants and offline retailers that had never adopted a digital platform before were all of a sudden jolted into a digital transformation journey for their survival. And the third is that India 2 and India 3 finally had to wake up to the real power and the real potential of digital. Because fundamental needs like education and medical advice became dependent on it. The pertinent question now for the industry, however, is as things start slowly opening up, where does the dust settle? And amongst many theories, there are two popular schools of thought. The first one thinks that we all did what we had to do due to the circumstances that we were thrown in. Once things open up fully, everything goes back to the way it was. It's just a matter of time. The second one, however, thinks that now that people have tasted the convenience of digital and become familiar with these platforms, this really, in many ways, is the new normal and it is here to stay. And this will pave an accelerated path for the next wave of digital growth in the country. I'll close my commentary with one very important event that has actually managed to go under the radar for a while. The whole digital disruption that started at the back of throwaway prices and unlimited data plans is also all set to change. Telcos, including Jio, are now lobbying for setting a floor price for data, which is expected to increase the 4 GB cost in India by 6x to 10x. If anything can be taken as an indicator, a small 40% price correction that happened late last year caused the first negative growth in the telecom industry in many decades. Most of this was actually users disconnecting their second connection. But with 6 to 10x growth, what happens? How will this new cog in the wheel influence the digital India story in the post COVID world? This brings us to our topic, reinventing internet business models to build products and services that will redefine customer experience in the years to come. Let's find out what our illustrious panel has to say. Sudeep, I'll start with you for a question. The financial crisis of 2008 led to the emergence of the fintech industry. UPI had already transformed payments in India pre COVID, but with digital payments now becoming the primary mode during COVID. How do you see this space evolving in the coming years?
Hey, go ahead. Thank you. So, COVID-19 actually forced fintechs to become more agile and innovative as payments became digital much more than before. So, post COVID, we saw that there was a necessity for merchants in response to the changing behavior of customers and the requirement for versatile contactless payment solutions. So there's now an increased requirement for agile and flexible omni-channel payment solutions, which allow customers to pay at all points of the purchase journey through different options, such as payment links or QR codes or subscription or recurring billing. And there's an increased need for credit card and affordability products at the point of sale to boost sales. Now, there's also a need to create that online presence to reach digital Indians. And when it comes to, if you look at the tier 2, tier 3 cities, adoption of EFT payment options is also on the rise for merchants and customers who need that fast or seamless solution for high value transactions, but who were unwilling in the past to transact online, which is often the case in the smaller towns. So the cashless world society seems to be imminent in the coming years, and the Indian consumer will need to feel that assuredness of safety of their money, security of their information, and simplicity of use. So investing heavily in encryption and other security measures will be critical and more important than anything else to secure private data of all users. AI, machine learning, robotics are thriving in detection of payment fraud, facilitation of credit queries, improvement of customer queries. And when it comes to data, big data is still big. We mine that information to detect fraud and use the predictive analysis to create risk profiles and make safe decisions. So when it comes to payment methods, there are a lot of innovative payment methods that are increasingly in demand, and contactless authentication mechanisms will continue to evolve from biometric to face recognition, which will eliminate not just the fear of getting infected through surfaces or objects, but also to carry any additional identity mechanism, whether it's a card or a mobile phone to scan a QR code or otherwise. So overall, yes, there's there's a lot of evolution in the fintech space, and it will continue to evolve with the infrastructure and products and with the regulatory changes that are driving these the evolved customer across these channels and all touch points also demand such products.
Sure. I think very relevant points, Deep. Let me bring in Ramneek and Soumya one by one into this as well. As consumers from an omni-channel perspective, right, both on the digital side and as well as on the physical side, what has the consumer demand for payments or the consumer prerogative for payments during this time be, and how do you see that going forward? I mean, does this actually stay, or do people go back to cash? Ramneek?
Yeah, so in our case, what we have seen is the adoption of contactless payment methods have actually doubled. So use of wallets, etc. While earlier was primarily driven by cashbacks and things of those nature, now what we see is that by natural demand itself, people are opting more for UPI, even other wallets like Paytm and all. And so far, it seems like the trend is steady. We are seeing it on all geographies, and I think it will continue.
Interesting. Soumya, your point?
We've seen a very similar trajectory as Lenskart on this one. That cards and wallets, etc., UPI especially, has seen quite the growth. And I don't see people going back to cash anytime soon. For a consumer like my parents, who are very cash driven and did not really feel comfortable making contactless payments, they have entirely moved to online modes of payment. So I don't see cash coming back as a mode of payment as such. And in terms of our business also, we've seen that almost 80% of payments have now moved to online mode.
Interesting. And Arun, from a big basket perspective, has anything changed, or it's pretty much business as usual in the digital world?
Is this question specific to payments or overall?
Specific to payments for now.
Payments. Yeah. So I think like what Ramneek and Soumya had mentioned, I think for us, we saw like a organic adoption for online payment instruments. For some time we removed cash on delivery as an option because back then surface transmission was a major deal, and all those things happened. So we had to sort of pull out from cash on delivery transactions. But we haven't seen like since we pulled it out, we haven't seen customers sort of dropping off. So bear in mind that our customers are not, the 18 to 30-year-olds. We also have people who are above 60 as well, who are very cash friendly and want to use cash. But even those people have started slowly migrating, to online-based modes. I think it's it's become more a question of habit now than the barrier to transact using, online. But it's, even though there's some massive uptake, I think there's still some room for cash. A lot of people, if you want to sort of grow your market share, go into newer segments, customer segments, and I think you still need cash as as an option.
Interesting. That's actually a very interesting point. Okay, moving to the next question, Ramneek, I'll start with you. Purely digital businesses witnessed multifold growth during COVID, but e-commerce, hybrid, or omni-channel industries witnessed disruption on many fronts during the pandemic. How do you think COVID impacting the omni-channel strategy play out in the next wave of commerce?
I think omni-channel will continue to become a even more important part going forward, because what we have seen is that we started as a pure play online player, and then basis of customer demand, we exploited all the channels and use them to reach customers, be it online or home visits or the retail stores traditional mechanism. Before COVID, what we had was a majority of our sales were driven from pure brick and mortar stores. But now what we see is that we are getting much more traction in home visits and online side, which have more than doubled during this period in terms of transactions and customers. So I think that trend will continue, and what that forces a retailer to do is to move forward at a much faster pace and introduce innovation, so that person is able to easily complete the transactions online. As an example, specific for Lenskart, what we did is it is very difficult for anyone to know what is the size of their glasses, because unlike a t-shirt where everyone knows what a small, medium, large is, no one knows what the size of their glasses is. So we quickly turned out a feature using our machine learning algorithm where you take a selfie and we tell you these glasses fit you well. Another place where we had to move quickly is WhatsApp is very highly penetrated with everyone, and and you talking about your mother doing first transaction online, but WhatsApp is what people refer to internet in many places. So now we have the capability of completing the full transaction on WhatsApp. So things like that will continue to take precedence over other projects for us, and I think for companies in general, they will need to adopt more and more these channels to reach out customers.
Very interesting. Soumya, what was your view on this? Soumya, I think you're on mute. Okay. I think she must be having trouble. Okay, let's move on. I think Arun, from a from a big basket perspective, what is your outlook on this?
See, we're not truly omnichannel, so I can't give you.
No, which is exactly why I'm asking you that question.
Yeah. So we have one business line which is sort of vending machine concept, wherein we have a decent assortment across apartments and corporates. But the scare is real, right? So even after COVID was there, now I think it's so common that people don't realize we are living in tougher times than before, but it's become part of life. But even otherwise, I think from our data, we've seen that people are moving more offline. The earlier habits of only being online is slowly subsiding. But we are in a better shape than what we were, right? So my take on this will be, omni-channel, at least for grocery, because you have to be in an enclosed space and it deals with food and safety and all that. I think it's still some time away, wherein people will be very comfortable. If at all, people might go back to the nearest kirana store because it's out in the open. There's no AC, nothing. But if you look at look at modern retail and the bigger malls and all that, I think it'll still take some time to get back on track. And until then, you have like a host of offerings now, right? So people are driving convenience to a great extent. So you have these hyperlocal players who deliver in 15, 20 minutes. You have the price players who deliver only price, and then you have us somewhere in between who sort of straddle all these three together. Yeah, I think omnichannel, I'm not the best expert in it, but at least from our experience, it's not, we've seen a tapered growth, in our offline efforts.
Interesting. And Sudeep, as I think you covered that in your commentary of the last question, right? But how does payment change in the omnichannel world?
So with regulatory changes, there are different mechanisms through which payments are being enabled in the omnichannel world. So the omnichannel payment solutions which allow payment customers to pay at all points in their journey through a variety of different options, whether it's UPI or BQR or subscription or recurring billing, has been seeing an uptick in terms of payments.
Interesting. And from an omni-channel perspective, Ramik, I'll go back to you. Everything that you spoke about, is this really just an India 1 trend, or does it change based on India 1, India 2, India 3 in terms of the cohorts and what people are comfortable with?
So at least what we are seeing is that this is a trend we are seeing all across, where contactless payments are up. People are much more willing to try online, are willing to try the transactions fully. In fact, certain channels are more heavy on India 2 and 3, like WhatsApp as an example is something which is very heavily adopted in other parts of the country. Learning by that, we are also launching our a bot for buying process in Hindi, which will be out by next month. So there are several things which we are doing, and I think uh, it doesn't have to do with the region specifically, but yes, you do have to tailor your offering and make something which is comfortable for them as per the region.
Interesting. Cool. I think we let's move on to the next question. I think Soumya has dropped off. We'll wait for her to join back in. Uh, so Arun, I'll ask you or I'll start with you for the next question. So there's a conversation about a W recovery curve and another sort of dip coming very soon, or a black swan event happening. How are you looking at the next 2 to 4 quarters? I mean, what's your view on it?
Yeah, again, going back to Big Basket, I don't want to comment on the broader macroeconomic trends.
Sure.
What we see is, we see that, groceries become more mainstream. Like you mentioned when you started off, with your premise, I think, digital adoption has seen a black swan event, and it's become a lot more faster now. So what we see is some sort of a very consistent growth in terms of online adoption, and that will sort of percolate into grocery and other players as well who are speaking here. And I don't think we'll see the growth that we saw earlier, because you have to understand that there's inflation, and commodities prices are increasing and all that, so that will sort of stem the flow a little bit. But outside that, from our perspective, I think we'll see a steady growth, especially in your tier 2, tier 3 markets, where we are seeing higher growth than what we saw in T1, and their contribution to our overall revenue has gone up substantially, compared to T1 cities, because in T1 cities you have a plethora of options to choose from. People are aware, and they make their choices very, they know their choices very clearly. But in T2, I think still it's new, and people are slowly adopting, and channels like, say, WhatsApp and vernacular, and very light apps, or a very well functioning mobile site, all these things sort of help drive growth going forward. So in terms of the outlook, yeah, it's fine, but it's not, you can't expect something that you saw over the last 3 to 4 months.
Interesting. And Sudeep, what is your opinion on the next 2 to 4 quarters from a payments perspective?
So this is a VUCA world. The only constant.
Hey, Sudeep, I think we.
Well.
Sudeep, I think we lost you there for a bit. Can you just repeat that part?
Yeah, I was saying that we live in a VUCA world. The only thing constant is change. But then, while working towards the purpose, that is to solve the payments problem across borders, to create a world without financial borders, where everyone can prosper. We've been focusing on how to do this, experiment diligently, and then come out with interesting products to solve the problems. While there are industries where they get or sectors which get affected significantly during any crisis, there are others which also adapt to the changes. So, for example, in this COVID situation, restaurants move to takeout, and aerobic studios move to remote classes. So there's always that shift. So while different sectors adapt, the overall payments ecosystem improves and helps in facilitating payments across those sectors. So I guess, and at the same time, there are other sectors which will thrive, whether it's e-commerce, or content-driven brands, or logistics, or transportation brands, or otherwise. So yes, while taking measures are critical to ensure health of the business, at the same time, there is a constant change in from a regulatory perspective that helps in the fintech space as well. So overall, yeah, we are cautious, but at the same time, we think that we don't see too much of an impact on the payment space.
Interesting. And Ramneek, what's your opinion on the W curve? Is there another dip coming, or I think the transition is truly going upwards from here?
So not too sure about another dip coming in or not, but it is definitely a time where businesses have to work towards agility quite a lot. And from our end, what we are trying to do is what anyone can really do the best at this point is to be ready and as agile as possible. As an example, every day there are new lockdowns which get announced in localized areas, or hotspots will get developed, and we have to make sure that supply chain is there, which is able to serve the customers. We maneuver orders via different locations, or we are able to ask our store staff, in case their store is in an area where it has to be shut down, we have the ability for them to work from home and continue to do the selling by assisting customers over app, etc. So that is what we are looking at in towards safeguarding the business and continue the growth that we are seeing.
Very, very interesting. The next question, and I think Arun, I'll start with you again because you spoke about WhatsApp and vernacular and sort of customizing the experience for India 2 and India 3. But here's the interesting part, right? With now a huge influx of first time shoppers, first time transactors, first time users coming across a wide variety of backgrounds, that in many ways is changing the cohorts that we have all modeled our apps platforms on. Uh, how does that change the customer experience, the app experience, or the platform experience for Big Basket?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, actually. um, See, for us, at least until now, I think till COVID, our customer, the whole cohort has been pretty homogeneous, meaning, based on lifetime values, then you'll see, if the customer doesn't matter if he's out of Pune or Chennai or, Nagpur, right? Based on your lifetime values, we can, sort of, to a certain degree of accuracy, predict how they're going to behave, right? And we sort of model all our funnels, our conversion efforts, our retention efforts, all that, even on acquisition efforts, right? Where we segment. But now it's an interesting time because a lot of the new customers that we've gotten over the last 4 months have been completely organic, right? So we don't know what their background is. As an app, we don't capture demographic data, we don't capture age, nothing, none of that sort. So I think what we believe is we'll have to, we sort of bank on our experience in delivering groceries. We sort of believe that we are the experts in delivering groceries. It's a very tough industry to be in, and the need to buy grocery online has been driven from a macro factor or an external factor. But the experience that a customer needs doesn't matter where he comes from, maybe barring language or barring certain other factors. I think it's pretty consistent, and we want to drive the consistency across. But this is just a hypothesis for now. Right, we haven't spent enough time on how we're going to manage the next league of acquisitions, right? And the only way a company can gain market share is through acquisitions, right? Your retention efforts, all that can happen, but that won't give you the incremental share that you need. I think this is a classic line from How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp, and then we're trying to figure out how to sort of acquire the next league of customers. I think like Ramnik said, I think that Lenskart does a lot of interesting stuff around their product to drive better conversions or better and they know the customer better compared to a lot of other companies. So we want to get to a stage where we want to use those techniques or product driven interventions to drive growth. But right now I don't have like a very clear cut answer because we're still acquiring enough customers as we speak.
Interesting. Ramni, coming over to you, as the cohorts change, as the consumer experience change, I mean, yes, one is the, obviously the change that you spoke about in terms of how do you go about acquiring users or acquiring orders. But does that fundamentally also alter your, digital versus offline strategy?
So there are a lot of changes which are driven by this. Like as an example, starting from acquisition strategy, we have seen success with Doordarshan for the first time during this period as people are watching a lot of Mahabharata and Ramayana. That's where we saw our first spike during this period, and we never used to advertise there. Then coming to what we are selling, so we have been able to gain a lot of new customers who are worried about increased use of their digital devices. So a lot of people are buying now zero powered computer glasses, which have blue shield to save them from the glare coming from the laptops and all, to the way they are purchasing, and which includes first initially moving to an assisted model where we have launched technology where our agents are able to see your app and help you handhold and place order if you're doing it for the first time, to now moving to more and more automation where we're launching bots and vernacular and things of those nature. So, I mean, everything from the acquisition strategy to the product that we are selling to the channels that they're using and the way they are buying, I think everything is going through a change in this. And so online and offline strategy is also seeing that change because certain needs of customers are still met offline, like getting the eyes checked up. But what we are seeing over there is that people prefer to get their eye checked up at home by a person coming in whose temperature check done and who is coming in with the full body suit on and things of those nature. And if they're going to the store, then they want to go with a booked appointment where they know exactly the time slot. They don't want to wait. The store needs to be empty and things of those nature. So I think it is a time where we are seeing change in every part of the business.
Very interesting. And Sudeep, I don't think enough people spend time talking about the UI UX of payments. But for these new set of users, uh, how are you looking at payment integrations, and has that whole payment experience, is that shifting in any way?
So PayU is a B2B organization, but payments is a B2C activity. So we need to address the end customer needs. Now, we've been trying to solve those critical challenges in that payment flow for the end customer as well. Say, for example, we are looking at how we can take risk-based authentication to the next level to improve the success rates for the merchant, and in turn helping the customer to ensure that his payments go through effectively. From a customer experience perspective, of course, it's limited to checkouts, making the checkout simple, seamless, and secure. And when it comes to offline payments, of course, it's the ability to engage the customer throughout the journey of payments in the offline space as well.
Interesting points, yeah. I think let's move on to the last, question, which is the, that data prices going up, or the per GB data not being unlimited and dirt cheap anymore. What does that do to the digital ecosystem? And I think Sudeep, in addition to that, I'll also sort of add the filter of the pressures on the internet ecosystem that has come during this time. Have you seen more payments fail, and how do you see this impacting in the times going forward?
So there is a need to provide affordable internet connectivity to rural India, because that section of Indian market has extremely price sensitive, has been extremely price sensitive in nature, and any policy affecting this these tariff rates has the consequences on usage of online systems or otherwise. On the checkout front, of course, we try to see how we can overcome some of these challenges. But if you look at it, the overall coverage has improved in some of these areas. But of course, the pricing, if the pricing increases, that will impact to some extent.
Interesting. Ramnik, your opinion? Will it change the Digital India story, or the boom continues?
I think competition will find its way, and people will figure out ways to bundle things and come back to the same prices. People are used to it, and I think long term we will probably not see a huge impact on this.
Interesting. And Arun, have you looked sort of, how do you look at this?
Yeah, we're still in a space where our market, I don't think data cost is going to impact them a lot. But data has become a fundamental need. So any change or correction will sort of elicit a market reaction as well. So like Ramnik mentioned, I think there will be ways and means that competition will bundle things and give it at similar rates. But in terms of how we need to be prepared for it, so even if it happens, in any case, I think lighter versions of the app using more text-based transaction mechanisms through WhatsApp, SMS. So I think those things will sort of gain traction more than earlier. But outside that, I don't think it will happen. Even if it happens, it shouldn't become a big problem. It won't cause any impact on the industry as such.
Interesting. Perfect. I think we are through with the questions. Thank you, all of you guys, for your valuable time and really relevant insights in this very interesting period that we're all embarking on. Thank you, Phygital and ICS, for making this happen through all of the disruptions that you guys would have faced. And most importantly, thanks every one of you for being a part of the discussion. Hope all of you have learned something from this and have some food for thought to carry back with you. Thank you.